I'm back in the studio with communication strategist Megan Sheeran. Hello again, Megan.
Hi, Robert. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Now look, following on from other conversations we've had, we're going to talk now about engaging people, how we actually engage people with our copy. So I think you've come armed with some tips again.
I have.
Okay.
So, key thing to remember when you're looking to write really engaging copy is it needs to be both informative and inspiring. And basically what it boils down to is it's got to be a great story.
Yep.
And that brings us really to the first rule, is know what's a story and what's not, because a list of facts, for example, doesn't make for a great story.
No.
So what you want to do is consider news values. And these are some criteria that act as a bit of a litmus test to help us determine whether the information we have is actually going to make a great story or not.
Okay.
So for example, a good story, something is newsworthy if it solves a problem for us,
Yep.
if it tells us something we didn't already know, or if it saves us time, energy or money.
Okay, interesting. So what it's not is when someone's banging on about themselves.
Absolutely.
Yes. Okay.
Unless they make it relevant in such a way that it addresses one of those 3 points.
Okay, okay.
And this is these news criteria are particularly relevant to the likes of blogs,
Yep.
for example, because we know that when we're writing for online, or people online, generally have a shorter attention span
Yep.
than when they're reading printed copy. And one of the main reasons that people subscribe to your blog and keep coming back to it is for newsworthy articles.
Yes,
You know,
okay.
they want.
So those points you just mentioned, then we should almost kind of have them alongside as we're writing a blog post, and then just measure it against that. Say, okay, does it tick these boxes?
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
I would use that at the outset when you're identifying your idea and planning it, to see first off whether that's going to actually work.
I don't think that many blog posters do that, do they? They just sort of
It's quite
sit down with a
possible.
blank sheet of paper or a blank screen and start writing. Okay, so what's next?
I think the next thing is one of the most important things to think about when you're writing engaging copy is how you begin a document and how you end it.
Yes.
And again, particularly relevant online because of that short attention span.
Yep.
Your introduction is absolutely key. It's got to grab the reader and hook them in and haul them along.
Yep.
Because we know that just because somebody starts reading something doesn't mean they necessarily finish it.
No.
So a few key ways to do that is, first of all, start simple and keep it short. And often what can work really well is a single sentence as an introduction. That can be a very powerful way of capturing people's attention and drawing it in.
Okay, so one that really gives people a jolt and kind of gets them focused.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
but
okay.
what you want to bear in mind there is, if that's the approach you're taking, you want to make sure that the information you're including is actually worthy of that much attention.
Yeah, sure, okay, yes.
The second thing you want to think about there is evoking emotion. So actually using or painting pictures with words, using really vital active verbs, keeping your language very lively, and also teasing your readers. So don't spoon feed them all the information up front in your introduction, because that's just boring. Actually, pull their hair a bit, convince them to follow you along past the first sentence.
Is it little tools like, more on this later and we'll explore that further in a second?
It could be.
Yeah, okay.
It could also be contradicting readers' expectations.
Okay.
So say, for example, the Australian writer Kate Grenville wrote a book called The Writing Book.
Yep.
And her very first sentence of her very first paragraph starts by saying, "This is not a how to write book."
Right. Which is exactly what people think it is.
Exactly, flips the whole idea on its head.
Yes,
But
okay.
what you want to do with that is just take a bit of care, because if you don't tread that line carefully, you run the risk of confusing or alienating your readers.
Okay. All right, great. So, and where to next? So we've got this idea that the story needs to be interesting, starts off with something quite arresting, bit of a sort of storytelling going on here.
Exactly.
What's next?
You need to think about how you're going to end it. And it's really important when you end a document that you tie up any loose strings and answer any questions that you've raised in the copy. And the way I like to think about it is an ending's like a goodbye. It's a breakup, really, with the reader. And you don't want to be remembered as, that girl or guy who broke things off without,
did it by text.
Exactly, or ever really explaining, why.
Yes.
So here's what you want to do. First of all, you need to link back to your lead.
Yep.
So answer any questions that you raised at the outset, or reinforce the solutions to any problems that you raised at the outset. You could also consider concluding with a call to action.
Yep.
So just making it really clear for the reader what it is that you want them to walk away.
Which might be on a blog, it might be, what are your thoughts, post a comment, tell us, you know, share your
Exactly.
views. Yeah.
So, you know, that's another great way, is actually inviting people to respond.
Yeah.
And people love to be asked what they think, particularly online. You know,
Yes.
it's very relevant for
Fantastic.
online copy.
Okay, look, thank you again so much. Some really good tips. And I must say, when I read a good blog, I love the way some people do this thing where they start with the theme and then they kind of take you somewhere else and then come back to the theme to close. It's so nice when it's
It's
done
actually
well, isn't it?
satisfying from a reader's perspective.
It is, very much so.
Yeah.
As you say, tidies it up. Okay, lovely. Thank you so much. If you want to find out more about you and your services, megansheerin.com.au.
Correct.
Thanks for joining us. Thank you.